Well, here we are, ready for deep dive number 6.
I am indeed.
This time we're diving into the beauty and the history of, well, Spanish.
Ah,
But more specifically, the dialect of Spain.
the dialect of Spain.
Buckle up, because we're landing in Berlanga de Duero.
Berlanga de Duero.
It's a municipality of Soria,
Okay.
and it's going to blow us away. The materials that you provided, they're a gold mine, seriously. Full of history and cultural treasures. I can't wait to, go through them.
Berlanga de Duero.
Berlanga de Duero, yeah.
Yeah. Sounds like a fascinating place. Its history, especially like from the pre-Roman period,
Yeah.
it has like so many layers of different cultures and influences.
Right. It's like, wow. Okay, so let's start at the very beginning
Yeah.
with its most ancient roots.
Yeah, ancient roots. That's a great place to start.
Right. I mean, there's archaeological evidence that points to human presence in Berlanga de Duero from, get this, the Chalcolithic and Bronze Ages. We're talking about settlements that existed like thousands of years ago.
Thousands of years ago.
Thousands of years ago.
That's incredible. Archaeology is amazing.
Yeah.
That we can go back in time and kind of see those periods,
It's amazing.
And not only that, but like the fact that there were Celtiberian settlements there,
Right.
that's even, even earlier cultural mix.
That's right, yeah. And speaking of mix, the origin of the name of the town, right, is also a big question mark.
Oh, yeah, right.
So is it from the Romans, or is it a fusion of Iberian and Celtic roots?
Yeah,
You know?
that's a good question. It's really fascinating, like a linguistic puzzle. So the traditional belief links it to the Roman Emperor Valerian, hence, the name Valeranica.
Yeah.
But the philologist Álvaro Gelmez de Fuentes, he proposed an alternative theory,
Yeah.
and according to his analysis, Berlanga could be a combination of ber, which is of Ibero-Basque origin, and langa, of Celtic origin, both meaning valley. Yeah,
Wow.
both meaning valley.
Oh, cultures. 2 words, same meaning,
Yeah,
coming together to give a name to a place.
right.
That's beautiful.
And I love that.
Yeah.
It's like the very essence of Berlanga de Duero is marked by union
Right.
and diversity from its very beginnings.
I love that.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And this blend of influences becomes like even more evident
Yeah,
when we delve into the period of Muslim rule in Spain.
right.
So, Berlanga de Duero, with its strategic location, became a key stronghold
Strategic, yeah.
within Medina Coeli's jurisdiction.
Yeah, Medina Coeli. Oh,
Right, of course.
Yeah,
A strategic place needs good defense.
of course.
So what about the Alcazaba?
The Alcazaba.
The Moorish fortification.
Yes,
I read that the original, preceded the castle that we can see today.
that's right. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, so the original Alcazaba predates the current castle. And it's fascinating to think that underneath the current castle,
Wow.
or like maybe near the San Juan Hermitage, we could find remains of that original Alcazaba.
Wow.
It would be like discovering a map from the past.
Wow. I love that. It's like, imagine the stories that those stones could tell, right?
Right.
About battles, conquest, daily life. But the history of Berlanga de Duero doesn't stop there
No, of course not.
with the Reconquista.
Yeah.
A family comes on the scene that will, forever change the destiny of the town.
The Tovar
The
family.
Tovar family, yeah.
Yeah.
Powerful family, ambitious family.
Wow.
They didn't just, acquire the town. They turned it into a Comunidad de Villa y Tierra,
Oh, wow.
which was like a form of administration at the time that was pretty unique. And if that wasn't enough, they also obtained the title of Marquise of the Berlanga, linked to the Duchy of Frias.
Whoa. I mean, talk about a statement of power. I mean,
Yeah.
what did they do with all that power? Did they build a palace or a cathedral or
They did both.
what?
Yeah, but before that, they made a decision that many people might consider drastic. They demolished several Romanesque churches to build the Grand Collegiate Church of Santa Maria del Mercado. Wait, hold on. Demolish churches to build an even bigger church.
Yes.
That sounds risky. Why would they do that?
It's an interesting question.
Like, what?
Some historians think they were trying to consolidate their religious authority and show the world their power, right? So the collegiate church with its Gothic Renaissance style and its impressive dimensions would become like a symbol of their influence.
I see. It's like they're saying, look what we can do. Look at how much power we have,
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you also mentioned a palace. What happened to it?
The palace with its beautiful gardens, was destroyed during the Napoleonic Wars.
What?
Yeah, they say those gardens were like some of the most beautiful in Europe, so imagine the loss.
Oh, so sad to think about all that beauty lost.
Yeah.
It seems like the history of Berlanga de Duero is full of, like, moments of splendor, but also loss.
It is, it is. But despite all of that, the town has managed to keep its charm and its heritage throughout the centuries, and there's still so much more to discover. From the transformation of the landscape to the literary connections, passing through local festivities and gastronomy, Berlanga de Duero is a place that, invites you to explore it deeply. It
Yeah.
is, yeah, it's like a roller coaster of emotions, right?
Yeah.
Wow, so much happened here, but beyond those grand constructions and powerful families, right?
Yeah.
There's a fascinating story about how the landscape has evolved in Berlanga de Duero and the cultural life that has permeated it.
Ooh, that's interesting. What kind of changes are we talking about? Did the Tovars, like, decide to plant an exotic garden in the middle of the Castilian plateau?
Haha. No, not exactly. Although I wouldn't be surprised coming from a family with such a taste for luxury. But think about the forests.
Yeah.
So originally the area was covered with oak and holm oak trees, but over time those forests they gave way to resin pine forests, a change with a big economic impact, by the way.
I see resin pines are highly valued for their resin, right? They must have been an important source of income for the region.
Exactly. And it's not just the forests that have changed.
Hmm.
Berlanga de Duero. It's in a strategic point on the banks of the Duero River,
Okay.
a river that marked a historical border between warring kingdoms during the Middle Ages.
Uh-huh. So that means Berlanga de Duero was like right in the middle of the battlefield for centuries. No wonder there are so many stories of conquests and reconquests.
Imagine conquered and reconquered by Muslims and Christians repeatedly over the centuries. What a story. And that story doesn't stop there in the 19th century. Berlanga de Duero became a constitutional municipality, and it even had a temporary name change to Berlanga y Hortazuela.
Berlanga y Hortazuela. That sounds a little strange. Why did they change it and then go back to the original name?
Well, name changes in history sometimes have complex explanations, and other times they're just a product of political circumstances. In this case, it seems that the annexation of a nearby town, Hortazuela, motivated the name change, but the union didn't last long, and Berlanga de Duero got its original name back.
History always surprises us. And speaking of surprises, what about the arrival of the railway? I guess that must have had a significant impact on a town like Berlanga de Duero.
Of course, in 1895, the Valladolid-Ariza line connected the town to the national rail network, opening up a world of possibilities. But as sometimes happens with progress, the passenger line closed in 1985, raising questions about economic changes and rural connectivity.
It's a story that repeats itself in many places. Sometimes progress brings with it unexpected losses. And if you talk about changes, you also mentioned the annexation of neighboring villages at the end of the 20th century.
Yes, it's a reality that affects many rural areas. Depopulation has caused changes in administrative boundaries, and Berlanga de Duero has not been an exception. Several villages in the surrounding area joined the municipality, creating a larger entity, but also reflecting the population decline in those areas.
It's a complex reality with its positives and negatives. But despite everything, Berlanga de Duero has managed to preserve its heritage and identity.
Totally agree. And to really understand the richness of this place, we need to delve into its cultural treasures. Are you ready for a guided tour of the most emblematic monuments of Berlanga de Duero?
More than ready. Let's start with the Plaza Mayo. What makes it so special? Is it one of those Castilian squares with arcades and a vibrant atmosphere?
You got it. The Plaza Mayor of Berlanga de Duero is a classic example of a Castilian square. Its quadrangular shape and its arcades, supported by wooden pillars on stone bases, give it a unique character. And if you look at the streets that surround it, you'll see that many of them also have arcades with adobe buildings in timber framing.
How picturesque it's as if time has stood still in those streets. And speaking of history, we can't overlook the Collegiate Church of Santa Maria del Mercado. That's one of the jewels of Berlanga de Duero, right?
Without a doubt, the Collegiate Church is an impressive monument declared an asset of cultural interest. Its Gothic Renaissance style and its dimensions will leave you breathless to give you an idea. Its construction in the 16th century involved the demolition of several pre-existing Romanesque churches.
Incredible. And who financed such a project? Did the Tovars do their thing again?
Indeed, it was the powerful lords of Berlanga Maria de Tovar and Íñigo Fernández de Velasco who wanted to make clear their influence and their alliance with the church. The Collegiate Church became a symbol of their power, a sign of their ability to transform the urban landscape.
I understand a church that is both a monument to faith and power. And inside the Collegiate Church, What artistic treasures can we find?
Get ready for a journey through different styles and eras. The high altar is presided over by a beautiful carving of the Virgin of the Market, a 12th century Romanesque sculpture. You'll also find a Churrigueresque altarpiece, a Renaissance choir stalls made of walnut wood, and a chapel with the Hispano-Flemish altarpiece from the late 15th century.
What a collection. It's like a museum inside a church. And speaking of museums, what about the lizard of Fray Tomas? I've heard fascinating stories about him. Is it a local legend, or is there really a stuffed lizard in the collegiate church?
It's not a legend. The famous stuffed black caiman is real, and it's in the collegiate church. It was a gift from Fray Tomas de Berlanga, a famous person from Berlanga de Duero who became Bishop of Panama and discoverer of the Galapagos Islands. Imagine the surprise of the inhabitants of Berlanga when they received a caiman as a gift.
It must have been quite a sensation, an exotic souvenir from an incredible journey. And after the collegiate church, what other must-see stop do we have on our tour of Berlanga de Duero? Perhaps a castle with breathtaking views.
Exactly. The Castle of Berlanga de Duero is another must-see. It was built in the 15th century on the foundations of Muslim and 15th century structures. Its thick walls and imposing keep will transport you to medieval times. And if you look closely, you'll see that there are remains of two walls that surrounded the town, one around the old town and the other around the new town of these walls. You can still admire the Mercado Gate and the Aguilera Gate.
I would love to climb to the top of that tower and admire the views. And since you mentioned the gates, what can you tell us about the Aguilera Gate? Was it the main entrance to the town?
The Aguilera Gate was the main entrance to the second walled enclosure of Berlanga de Duero. It was built in the 14th century and renovated in the 16th century, so its architecture reflects the evolution of styles over time.
Fascinating. It's as if each stone, each door, each building tells us a chapter in the history of Berlanga de Duero. And since we've mentioned the influence of the Tovar family, what happened to the palace they built? Did it suffer the same fate as the Romanesque churches?
Unfortunately, no. The Palace of the Marquises of Berlanga, a Renaissance building with an impressive facade and gardens that were said to be among the best in Europe, was destroyed during the Napoleonic Wars.
What a pity. It's an irreparable loss for the cultural heritage of Berlanga de Duero. Is there anything left of the palace today?
Yes, fortunately, the main facade is preserved, which was declared an asset of cultural interest. It's a melancholic reminder of the grandeur that this palace had in its heyday.
I imagine the beauty of those gardens with their terraces and classical elements. It's a shame we can only imagine them. And near the palace, what other monuments can we find?
If you walk around the area, you will find the pillory, also known as Rollo. It is a Gothic column that was moved from the threshing floors to a more visible place next to the road. Originally, it served as a symbol of justice and authority, a place where criminals were exposed to public shame and even physical punishments were applied.
A reminder that justice in the past was very different from today. And continuing our tour, what can you tell us about the hermitage of Our Lady of Solitude? Is it one of those small and charming hermitages that we find in many towns in Spain?
Exactly. It is a typical humilladero hermitage with its characteristic quadrangular layout and its location at the exit of the town. It was built in the 16th century, and it is believed that the pillory we mentioned before may have had a similar function to that of a boundary cross marking the limit of the town's territory.
It's interesting how religious architecture was integrated into the urban and rural landscape of the time. What about the convent of Paredes Albas? Is it another example of the rich heritage of Berlanga de Duero?
The convent of Paredes Albas is a sad case of abandonment despite having a file open as an asset of cultural interest.
No.
It has been in a state of progressive ruin since the early 20th century.
What a pity. It's a shame that a building of such historical value is in that condition. Isn't there any project for its restoration?
The truth is that there are initiatives to recover the convent, but the lack of funds and the complexity of the work make the process slow. Hopefully, we will soon see this building restored and open to the public.
Hopefully, and outside the walled enclosure, what other monuments do we find? Is there anything that surprises us?
There you can find the remains of the old Hospital of San Antonio, which also served as a pilgrim shelter. It was built in the 16th century, and the entrance gate, the kitchen chimney, and the associated hermitage dedicated to the Virgin of the Towers are still preserved.
It is moving to imagine the pilgrims finding refuge in that hospital after a long journey. It must have been a place full of stories and emotions. And since we were talking about journeys to the past, what can you tell us about the San Baudilio Interpretation Center? Is it a place where we can immerse ourselves even more in the history of Berlanga de Duero?
Without a doubt, the Interpretation Center is located in the former slaughterhouse and is a must-see to understand the cultural richness of Berlanga de Duero. There you can find pieces from different churches in the town, as well as explanatory panels and audiovisuals about the famous Hermitage of San Baudelio, a building with a unique architecture that fuses Mozarabic and Romanesque elements.
I would love to visit that hermitage. It sounds fascinating. But before we delve into the history of San Baudelio, I think it's time to talk about the living culture of Berlanga de Duero. What can we find in the literary, festive, and gastronomic fields? Is there any special connection with Spanish literature?
Excellent question. Berlanga de Duero is not just an open-air museum, but a place full of life and traditions, and yes, there is a very special literary connection that you're going to love. Does the name Antonio Machado ring a bell?
Machado, yeah, of course, one of the great poets of the generation of 98. Does Berlanga de Duero really appear in his work? That's incredible.
Yeah, it does. Berlanga de Duero has the honor of appearing in Campos de Castilla, one of Machado's most important works in one of his poems. He describes how a shepherd tells him the story of Alvar Gonzalez, a tale full of symbolism and tragedy set precisely in this town.
Wow. I would love to read that poem and imagine Machado walking the streets of Berlanga de Duero being inspired by its history and its people. It's amazing how literature can transport us to other times and places.
Totally. And if we talk about time travel, the festivities of Berlanga de Duero transport us to past times full of tradition and color.
Tell me more about those festivities. What celebrations are the most important? Do any of them have to do with the history of the Tovar family?
Not directly with the Tovars, but with the religious tradition of the town. At the end of August, the festivities of the Virgin of the Market are celebrated, and on September 24th, those of the Virgin of the Towers.
Two patron saints, double celebration. That's devotion.
And also, we can't forget San Isidro on May 15th, a deeply rooted festivity in the Spanish rural world in Berlanga de Duero. The Farmers Guild organizes a traditional distribution of loaf bread and cheese.
I love that kind of tradition. Sharing food, celebrating together is something that connects us with our roots. And besides the religious festivities, what other events are celebrated in Berlanga de Duero? Is there a medieval market or a traditional fair?
Yes, to both. In mid-August, a medieval market is organized that recreates the atmosphere of the time. There's also a craft fair on December 8th, which was formerly an important livestock fair.
It's interesting to see how traditions evolve over time, and since you mentioned livestock, what can we say about the gastronomy of Berlanga de Duero? What typical dishes can we taste on this culinary journey?
The gastronomy of Berlanga de Duero is a delicious mix of Castilian and Aragonese influences. You can't leave without trying the cocido, the figon, a typical cod recipe from the area, the potatoes with conger eel, or the chicken rice.
Sounds delicious, a mix of traditional flavors that are sure to win over the palate of any traveler. And of course, we can't forget pork products, so important in Castilian culinary tradition.
Of course, sausages and other products derived from the pig slaughter are a fundamental element of the local gastronomy, and let's not forget the fresh vegetables from the local gardens.
A perfect combination of tradition and local products. And for those looking for outdoor activities, what options does Berlanga de Duero offer? Are there hiking trails, bike rides, or any water sports on the Duero River?
The town itself does not have great options for water sports, but the natural environment invites you to enjoy the outdoors. There are hiking trails in the surroundings, and for sports lovers, the town has a natural glass soccer field, a sports center, a summer pool, a tennis court, and a hostel with a camping area.
An ideal place to disconnect from the hustle and bustle of the city and enjoy the tranquility. We have really done a deep dive into the history, culture, and charm of Berlanga de Duero.
It has been a pleasure to share this journey with you and with our listener. I hope we have awakened their curiosity to discover this unique corner of Spain.
Personally, I was fascinated by the history of the Tovar family and their influence on the architecture of Berlanga de Duero. Imagine the audacity of demolishing Romanesque churches to build the collegiate church. And of course, the legend of the Lizard of Fray Tomás has completely captivated me.
It's an anecdote that perfectly reflects the adventurous spirit of some characters from Berlanga de Duero. And now, dear listener, we leave you with a question to ponder. Given the rich past of Berlanga de Duero and its strategic location, how do you think its cultural landscape will evolve in the next century?
A question that invites us to imagine the future of this special place. We hope this deep dive has inspired you to continue exploring the history and culture of Berlanga de Duero. Until next time.